I would like to extend a warm welcome to all members of the Planning Committee, officers and members of the public in attendance at today's meeting. I am Councillor Christine Ward, Chairman of the Planning Committee. I would now like to hand over to Democratic Services to read the housekeeping rules.
Thank you. Please note that this meeting is being broadcast live on the Council's website via YouTube. It will remain available for a minimum of 12 months. I would remind those in attendance to use your microphone when speaking and remember to switch it off once you have finished speaking. Please also switch any mobiles or laptops to a silent setting for the duration of the meeting. If the fire alarm rings, please can everyone leave the room immediately and use the nearest fire exit, but do not use the lift. Please go to the fire assembly point, which is located at the bottom of the car park by the garages. Thank you.
Thank you. And do I have apologies, please?
We have received apologies from Councillor Phil Woods.
Thank you. I'd like to confirm the minutes for the meeting held on the 9th of April. Do you agree? Thank you. Can I have declarations of interest, please? Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, application 2510210, Little Acre. It's in my ward. I'm not on the planning committee and yet to comment on this application. Thanks.
Penny?
Thank you, Chair. 24-10445, 83 Commercial Road, Totton. I do sit on town planning, but I don't vote.
Any more? None. Okay. We'll then go to our first presentation. This is on page 5 of the agenda. Application number 24/10809, land to west of Whitesbury Road, Fordingbridge. We have committee updates. There's quite a few updates on this sheet. I trust you've all read them. Stephen Bellet isn't with us today, so Robert will be presenting this. We do have speakers. We have Mrs. Susan Bangert, is that? Yeah, thank you. Who's the agent. We also have the applicant from Penny Farthing Homes that is here, that he will answer questions if needed. That's Mr. Guy Hagar. So thank you, Robert. We'll go ahead with the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just before I start the presentation, just one additional verbal update. We received, officers received some additional design clarification from the applicants yesterday evening, so I'll refer to that in any subsequent questions if need be. Okay, so the application in front of us today is a reserved matters application for 74 residential dwellings and associated alternative natural recreational green space, public open space, ancillary infrastructure, and the discharge of a certain number of conditions related to the associated outline consent. First plan in front of us is the red line plan. So this shows the red line for the reserved matters application, which, as I mentioned, was part of, associated with the associated outline consent. There is the general location. So the blue line on the plan is the outline consent, and then you can see the portion of that scheme that is in front of us today in the reserved matters is the red line there. You can also see as well the context of this local plan strategic site on the outskirts of Fordingbridge to the northwest of the town. So there is the aerial photograph. Again, you can see the red line there within SS17, which is the local plan allocation site. And this is phase 1C. You can see there in the bottom right-hand corner, and it connects through to Whitesbury Road. You can also see as well on the aerial photograph the other portions of the allocation site to the north of this part of the allocation, which have been subject to prior applications for development. This is our local plan context master plan for strategic site 17. So in this case, you can see that the reserve matters application is associated with the lower portion of residential development as we've defined there, and the public open space. I thought it would be useful as well, given there's been some time since the outline application was taken to committee, just to go back and go through the parameter plans that were part of the outline permission. This sets out the land use, so essentially in line with the local plan concept master plan, we have essentially a residential development with associated public open space. And in this instance, as I've mentioned already, this application relates to the portion of identified residential development in the block in the southeast corner or lower right on this particular parameter plan. Here you can see this is the parameter plan for access and movement, and two key things really. One is the access road which connects through to Whitby Road, and which is the yellow line, and also the existing public right-of-way which cross the site both from east to west between the two blocks of proposed residential development, and also between, it might be difficult to see, but there's a public right-of-way between the two lower grey blocks as well there. So that's on the western edge of this application for us today. Parameter plan for building height. So you can see there that the buildings with the greatest height, which are 2.5 stories, will be located essentially along the main access road into the overall development, which forms a core, and then correspondingly lower densities around the edge of the scheme. So quite a straightforward distribution of building heights. And the built density as well essentially follows the same principle. So the more dense development, such as it is, would be within the centre of the overall development, and also within the northwest corner of this particular parcel, and then correspondingly lower levels of density around the edge. This is the illustrative master plan within the outline consent. And you can see that it generally follows the concept master plan and forms the basis for consideration for this reserve matters, with essentially housing surrounded by open space. So in terms of the reserve matters application in the area there, we can see that the applicants provided us with character areas within this particular application. I think of key interest for us are the slightly higher density development, which comprises flats and terraced houses in the red area to the north, and that includes a larger block of flats, which I'll come on to later on in the presentation. Also the green spine, which was the public right-of-way I mentioned. So the applicants have sought to have dwellings facing that spine, so there's good frontage and surveillance of that particular route. And then as well, we've got the countryside edge, which is the blue area there, which is a more informal and lower density part of the scheme. So the landscape master plan, following that character area assessment and the outline parameter plans, is in front of you here. So essentially we've got a scheme for 74 dwellings, and you can see from top to bottom at the top of the scheme by the main access road we have an informal play area, which we'll come on to later. The public open space, which wraps around the site on the eastern side of the application and the southern side of the application site, comprises a mixture of alternative natural recreational green space, drainage features, including basins, footpaths, and informal public open space. And as you can also see as well, there's quite an extensive network of pedestrian footpaths as well, which provide access not only for this particular phase, but also subsequent ones as well when they come forward. So in terms of the actual housing, there's a mix of housing types within the scheme. So that includes one-bed apartments and two-bed apartments. Also a couple of three-bed apartments as well, and they're concentrated within the denser northern part of the scheme, and a couple of typologies I'll come on to. And then the rest of the site comprises a mix of 2, 3 and 4-bed houses, and that includes as well a number of the affordable houses that was negotiated at the outline stage. I think in total there's 18 affordable units within this particular reserve matters, and then the residual affordable housing that was negotiated at the outline stage will be provided in subsequent stages. So, parking, servicing and EV charging. Parking strategy has been subject to quite a lot of dialogue and discussion with the applicants over the last few months. And generally, the strategy is to remove the vehicular parking away from the frontage of the buildings, also particularly along the green spine, which is on the left-hand side there, and on the main access road through this particular parcel. And that's particularly germane to the more dense areas at the top of the application site and in the centre, where you can see that the parking has been placed in courtyards to the rear. So that is to remove the parking there, so that green spine doesn't become a space dominated by parked vehicles. And the same also applies for the access road. As you come into the site, you can see the large flatted block. Later on, you will have houses with on-plot parking. Those, that initial flatted block and houses, the parking is located to the rear, so far less visual intrusion in that particular part of the site. It's particularly important to do this for the flatted block as well, because you're coming into the site up along access road, and that will be essentially be the first building you'll see. So we wanted people to see the building rather than a lot of parked cars, so they've been sited towards the rear. The houses, as mentioned, on the lower part of the site generally have on-plot parking with a mixture of garages, car barns and surface parking spaces. So in terms of reserve matters, we can see here that the larger, more dense development is located within the north of the site, and that includes the flatted block I mentioned, and then detached, slightly lower density houses along the perimeter. And I think that's essentially in line with that was agreed at the outline stage parameter plans. So turning to the houses themselves, this is the large flatted block in the north of the application site, and as you can see, these apartments have a traditional vernacular, which includes units up in the roof space as well with the dormers. That's a theme that runs through all of this particular scheme, is that the vernacular, architectural vernacular is traditional in appearance. And I would say as well that extends as well to the peripheral elements as well, including, in this case, the car barns, which you can see on the right-hand side there, and also the detailing along the street, such as the boundaries there. We've got a low brick wall with pillars and hedging and metal fencing. So in conjunction with the landscape planting as well, we believe that that's quite an attractive entrance to the site when you first come in to see it up the proposed access road. And on this elevation, you can see this is the view from the courtyard itself. So people will park to the rear of the flatted block, and the door you can see there in the centre of the building is the main entrance door for those particular flats. So I think myself and the case officer are extremely happy with this block. I think that's an attractive block and shows that you can get higher density development, including flats on essentially what is essentially a suburban scheme with some good traditional architecture. So I think we're quite happy with that one. Now, turning to the houses themselves, there's 4 houses there, a terrace of 4, 2 central units there, and also the 2 units with the side entrances with the bay windows. Again, and you can see on the right-hand side as well, that's the side elevation facing onto the front door there. Again, traditional vernacular, including the unit on the left-hand side, has hanging tiles. Again, we were happy with those. We think that's an appropriate traditional vernacular. Again, and a similar theme again for these particular plots, 23 and 24, the front and side elevations. On this one, you can see that the roof has been hit as well, so that reduces the massing of the roof rather than what could be quite a large gable. So we think that's quite an appropriate roof for that one as well. These units are affordable ones, so they are essentially a more plain vernacular, as you probably would expect, but we feel that there's enough continuity and synthesis there with the market housing as well. There's some detailing around the windows, and essentially we feel that they're sufficiently cottage-like to be appropriate within the context of the market housing. I think these ones as well actually face onto the green spine as well, so they've got quite a nice outlook from the front of the building. Also as well, I think it's worth highlighting as well, we've got about half a dozen bungalows within this scheme as well, and I think given discussion we've had with other developers where it's really painful sometimes, to be frank, to try and get some bungalows, I think credit to the applicant in this instance, we've got some bungalows here. There is a reference in the local plan that we would welcome bungalows if provided on our strategic sites. So yeah, these are, I think we're happy with these, nice hip roofs. So credit to the applicant on that particular element. And I would say, whilst I won't be the case officer for subsequent phases, I would certainly welcome more bungalows later on in the scheme in other reserve matter phases. Flats above the garages, another typology. There's only 2 of these as well, and I know the case officer has spent some time on these particular units trying to get them right. So we've got a mixture of materials here. You can see that particularly on the right-hand side elevation as well, brick on the lower and then panelling on the first floor with the dormers as well, parking underneath, and that provides another typology within the scheme. So there's a good mix of different flats and house types. So the larger detached houses, particularly around the south of the application site, follow that traditional vernacular. I think that speaks for itself really as well. So these are obviously market homes. So that's really following that continuity that we saw within the manor house flats, with hedging to the front and trees as well. So these are the street scenes. So this is looking at, you can see in the centre there, the manor house flats, and then also to the right of that, the houses with the hip roofs, and then on the left-hand side as well, those are the houses which front onto the area of open space you can see within the top right-hand corner of the black and white plan underneath. So essentially, I think that's quite a pleasant street scene. And as the officer has put in the report, that's supplemented by quite a comprehensive landscape planting strategy as well, which I think he's mentioned includes up to about 300 new trees. Same again here, this is a street scene down the, what we've called the green spine, which is the route of the public right of way. So you've got a mix of market and affordable houses facing onto that with planting as well. And that benefits from what I mentioned earlier on in the presentation, that is devoid of parking there, so we haven't had to put an access road in, and all the parking has been put in the courtyard towards the rear. So we think the overall street scene is of a good quality because of that. And the third element there, that is around the bottom of the site, facing onto the open space there, and you can see that there's a mixture of bungalows and larger detached houses, which gives a bit of visual variety and reduces the impact of some of the larger roofs by having those single-storey dwellings. Materials, reflecting what I outlined earlier, essentially there's an emphasis on traditional materials, hanging tiles, brickwork, slate, grey slates for roofs, and black UPVC coloured goods. I think that's really, I don't have anything else to add to that. It speaks for itself. One additional element is the doorstep play, which is, as mentioned earlier, is located at the top of the application site, and that includes a mix of what officers have termed play on the way features, so mostly wooden features and quite informal. A more structured and formalised play area will come forward within later phases as well, so there'll be at least 2 play offers as well, and it was decided to bring forward this particular element within the first phase, so we'll look for a more formalised offer within subsequent phases to the west of this particular area. So just to clarify, the ANRG is the pale green area on the eastern side of the Reserve Matters plan there. You can see how that links into the informal open space, which is essentially the green room, the play area, and a small area to the southwest of the housing. And that includes, as I mentioned earlier, a good network of footpaths. So the conclusions and planning balance, proposal is for approval of Reserve Matters for 74 new dwellings, including 18 affordable houses. Proposal was considered to be well designed with significant areas of new tree planting, protection of existing trees and woodlands, as well as other public benefits relating to the provision of significant areas of public open space in the ANRG land. Development result in social and economic benefits and release much needed housing, taking into account our current lack of sufficient housing land within the district. Development will also safeguard and bring into more beneficial use a number of public rights of way which cross the site. Overall, it's considered balance considerations, one, a clear approval taking into account public benefits when considered against the identified limited environmental harm to a designated heritage asset, and as set out in the report, that relates to a listed building to the south of the site, which was originally identified in the outline application. So the recommendation is to approve the Reserve Matters and details pursuant to the conditions applied for, subject to any final details required and conditions as set out in the committee report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that very detailed presentation. We'll now go to speakers. Mrs. Susan Bangor, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Penny Farthing Homes welcomes the recommendation for approval of the first phase of residential development at SS17. They are keen to deliver the new homes that are so desperately needed in New Forest, and to that end, this application will deliver 74 new homes, both private, affordable and first homes. It will also deliver a substantial amount of alternative natural recreational green space and open space, as you've seen on the slides from the presentation, which will be of benefit to future and existing residents. Penny Farthing has worked closely with and had a number of positive meetings with officers, and this level of engagement is reflected in the high design quality of the layout. The committee report confirms that the design is acceptable and will provide a development of an appropriate house style design set in an attractive site layout and landscaping. The report is clear that the proposal is compliant with all relevant policies. Penny Farthing is proud to bring before you a high-quality landscape development that will make a significant contribution to the provision of new homes in Fordingbridge, building on its previous successful projects within the vicinity. We trust that members will support this ambition and the officer's recommendation. We fully endorse the officer's report, which provides a detailed and comprehensive assessment of the proposal. If members have any questions, we'd be pleased to assist. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, do you have questions for Councillor Hawkins?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't know the answer to that. I do know that flats over the Fogs, flat over garage, over a parking space, I wouldn't say they're ubiquitous, but they're quite a reasonably common residential typology we have on these larger schemes. It may be the case that you don't put EV charging infrastructure underneath the living accommodation associated with the parking space. I do believe that those units are affordable units. They are, thank you. So they're affordable units. So that may be something that is discussed with the registered social landlord when hopefully they're taken on by one of our preferred partners. And it may be that it's just left as a standard parking space without any associated EV infrastructure.
Can I ask Mr. Hagger, or can you comment any further on that?
I'm afraid not really. I'm like your officer, I'm not an expert on building regulations, but they're not an unusual type of development. We've provided them elsewhere on schemes, and I expect the fact that they are going to be affordable units, we have to meet the very high standards of insulation and fire protection. It's never an issue that's been raised before, so that's really all I can say on that.
Thank you. Councillor Dowd.
Thank you. There were a number of concerns in EMV3 that were raised. Have any of these been addressed in the planning? Can you just give a little bit more detail about those? It's on page 11.
Yeah, no, thank you for your question. So we're looking at the objection from our environmental design colleagues. I have to say, our environmental design colleagues have been engaged throughout the process of discussion that the applicants have mentioned just now throughout the process. So they've been engaged in that, including actually meeting with them and the site promoters at their offices in Bournemouth earlier on this year. So I'm satisfied that our colleagues have been engaged within the process of getting to the point that we are today. With regard to the specific points that our colleagues have objected to, I note that there's 3 bullets on page 11. The first one, the edge of the development along plots 62 to 66, 47 to 50 does not offer a good enough boundary to open space, should be a hedgerow. I would say could be a hedgerow. And I think we have to give a certain amount of largesse to the developers to make a decision over what they consider the actual boundary treatment could be. And then in the second point, at the entrance site, mismatch of pathways resulting from the public right-of-way being maintained on their original line instead of being diverted along new paths results in a contrived landscape. I don't believe it's contrived. There is a slight tension there between the public right-of-way and the play area, but the point I would make is that the public right-of-way was there first. So it's we've now got a public right of way which has a footpath, a play area which has the footpaths around it and one through it as well. But I don't consider that a particular problem, because the whole emphasis on that particular type of play is to have something quite open as well. So I don't believe that results in a contrived landscape. And then the third point, the revised layout for the green space play area is a poor design solution which depletes the landscape quality of this part of the scheme. Again, I don't believe that. I think what the case officer has tried to do, and what I mentioned within the presentation, is because we've got a portion of the overall reserve matters, and we'll be coming back in due course with the other phases. Those other phases will have a different play offer, and this particular phase gives this particular play offer. So I don't believe, frankly, that this is a poor design solution.
Can I just summarise to check I've understood? So basically what you're saying is that there are balances here, and your view is overall you're satisfied, and that these don't rise to the level of needing to be conditions because they're addressed in other ways.
Yes, yeah, essentially. There are always, whenever you've got a reserve matters in particular and you're looking at detailed design, there are always compromises and other elements. But I think the key element on the play offer in front of us today is its proximity to the houses. So that gives youngsters an opportunity to play within a green space in close proximity to their houses. Yes, there's a public right of way there, but the public right of way was there first. So I think, and once you're on the ground, you're not, you're just going to see a footpath. You're not going to see a public right of way. So I'm happy that that is a satisfactory design solution in terms of play.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. Yes, Calvin.
Chair, if I can just add on to the case officer's comments there, in terms of what you've had his narrative, just to take you back to your report, the case officer in setting out matters of open space, play, rights of way, the layout of the site, that balance that you've just been taken through is all in the report. So specifically, I'm thinking of, as an example, page 17, the middle of that page, references had to the concerns of the environmental design officer, and then the narrative goes on and discusses how it's acceptable, why it's acceptable, and how we've reached the recommendation and the balance. And that happens through the report with regards to those 3 or 4 different points. So just to say, as well as that narrative, it's in the report before you.
Councillor Wade.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a couple of questions, really. The first one, I noticed it's a sink to the north of the site, which presumably, obviously, that's wetland. And I've been looking through the papers for sort of any drainage, because some of these developments, especially in wet areas, we tend to have drainage problems. I can't find it in the report. It might be I've missed it, but perhaps you could reassure us that appropriate drainage is available, because many of the developments we've had in the past, we've had drainage problems. And the second question, which is dead easy, for the big building with the centre, take it that into the design, appropriate measures are taken to make sure there's an appropriately sized wheelie bin store for the future.
Thank you for your questions, Councillor Wade. The first one, with regard to drainage, it was originally submitted that condition 15 of the outline application, which pertains to surface water drainage, would be included. However, we agreed with the applicants to remove that from the application, because we were still waiting, as of late last week, for comments from the Environment Agency and the lead local flood authority at Hampshire County Council. That condition 15 has been taken out, and that will be addressed as a distinct, separate condition of discharge, as you would normally. So the matter of surface water drainage will be addressed. It's just not in front of us today. Turning to the second point on the flats and the bins, there is in the report page 24. Yeah, there's a brief section on refuge collection. And it states that the council's waste officers consider the latest plans and find them acceptable in how the site will function for refuse collection. The courtyards and other side road locations will also provide for bin collection points. The apartment block, which is the large block of the Manor House, has its own bin collection building and collection point where communal bins can be accessed. So we're satisfied that for the flats, the bin strategy has been addressed.
About the drainage issue, and the only reason that I'm sort of sensitive to this is we've had a number of developments in the past where developers have come along with a drainage plan and then it's changed, and I can think of one in my area where there is a measurable problem over that. And being that there's a sink and clearly this is a wetland, what certainty can we gauge from this, because it's not actually in this bit, that we're going to get an appropriate scheme that ticks all the boxes that we need to? Because this is an issue that comes with many developments, and because it's not here for us to say that's sorted, it's obviously a bit of a concern. Do you understand? You see where I'm coming from with this?
Excuse me. Ordinarily, with an outline consent, as we've got here, you would have a condition, as we've got here in this outline consent, attached to address surface water drainage. And more often than not, that would be discharged prior to the resolution of reserved matters. As I say, the original intention was to include condition 15 for surface water drainage within this application, but it's been taken out as we were still when we were waiting late last week for responses from the EA and the County Council. That's been taken out, and officers will review that accordingly and just seek to discharge the surface water condition as per standard. So we'll go through that. I mean, generally, we don't come to committee with conditional discharges. So all I can say is, I hear what you're saying about the need to address it appropriately, and I think we've done that by waiting for suitable comments from our colleagues at the EA and the County Council, and then we'll go through that.
If we've already passed the application.
Well, generally, as a general rule, if you have appropriate consultee not objecting, then you probably wouldn't discharge the condition. We would only discharge the condition once our technical specialists, and Stephen and I are generalists, we're not hydrologists, so we need to rely on our technical colleagues to give us the appropriate view. So once they're satisfied, it's likely that we'll be satisfied as well that it would be appropriate to discharge that particular condition.
Councillor Davies.
Thank you. I won't go on HOU2 as that's not relevant, I don't think, on this one, but I will go on the public open space and the right of way. We've had issues where obviously land ownership is difficult. How will that be maintained? Because obviously if you have the footpath running through, that's going to be maintained by County Council. And then are we going to maintain the public open space, or is that going to be a management company? And how is that going to interact in terms of actually getting stuff done and repairs? Because I've had so many issues locally trying to get stuff done on land that both sides aren't taking any sort of ownership for. So that's my first one. My second one is on the bin stores, in terms of the block of flats, the apartment block. We've had issues again in Pennington where the new bin system, they've gone to deliver the bins and the bin stores aren't big enough. And it's obviously costing us a lot of money now to sort it all out. But have we got guarantees that the proposed layout is big enough for our current system or our new system?
Okay, well, I'll go to the second bin question first. And as I mentioned to Councillor Wade, we've got page 24 section there on refuge collection, and as the case officer has set out, the council's waste officer has considered the latest plans and finds them acceptable in how the site will function for refuge collection. So that's the advice we've received from our internal colleagues.
I understand that. When was that advice received?
Well,
Because obviously the issues with the bin stores has only come up recently, and I just want to see if,
I would assume, as it's the latest plans, that that's quite recent.
but this was only last month when they realised the bin stores weren't big enough.
I'm sure it's been well thought about for months. We've known for ages and ages that it was coming.
Yeah.
Did you want to make any comment?
I can confirm, I think the latest waste and recycling response was received on the 27th of February, where they, but the design is in accordance with the current requirements. So it's been designed to accommodate the council's requirements.
Chairman, maybe I can help and add, just to pick up on the comments of the case officer and the applicant. Your officers in the waste service have looked at the application. I'm aware of there's some difficulties around the district with accommodating the new waste provision in existing developments, but this isn't an existing development, it's a new development. They've looked at it, I would have expected, in light of the emerging waste strategy and the need to provide enough space to accommodate the new bins that are going to be delivered around the district. And in the absence of anything from your waste service to say it's inadequate, I would put it to you as it is in the agenda and as Mr. Thane has taken you through with regards to the two questions from Councillors Davies and Wade.
Okay, did you want to come back? Sorry.
Sorry, that was one question I asked. The second one was the open space one.
With regard to public rights of way, I would direct members to page 19 of the committee reports. It states there the earlier responses of the County Council raised concerns regarding the treatment and protection of the public right of way across the site. The applicants have addressed these concerns in the latest submissions, which show that every right of way being protected and surfaces in line with each of the public right of way being unaffected by buildings or new planting. Surfacing works of the right of way will need to be subject to a separate agreement under section 278 of the Highways Act between the developer and the local highway authority. The matter is also covered in the section 106 agreement with the associated outline permission. Other safeguards such as temporary diversion orders will need to be in place during construction works, and again these matters will be covered by regulatory processes outside of the application. And most importantly, concerns raised have therefore been adequately addressed, and the Hampshire County Council's countryside services have now confirmed that they do not have an objection.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? In which case we'll go into debate. Councillor Frampton.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think this is a very well designed application with many units that would not look out of character even in the national park. Very nice designs. I've got one comment, it's a minor comment and it doesn't really have too much bearing on whether we propose recommendation or not. On the play areas, when they're done nicely outside and they're all natural with bumps and posts and things. I've recently been to Heatherstone Grange to look at the Sang area, and there was a lovely outdoor play area, and it was with some of our lads from NFDC that do the maintenance. And the importance of these applications is that they look nice now when they're new, but maintaining them and keeping them looking nice comes down to design. And there is nothing worse than seeing sharp humps and posts. And our lads just cry when they look at it because you can't get a ride-on mower on it. You have to manually push one, strim, and the harder you make something to maintain, the less likely it is to be maintained. So just a comment, when your designers come in on some of these lovely outside play areas, make them big and smooth so we can get a mower over them that you can sit on. But having said that, I'd like to propose the recommendation straight away that we approve reserved matters. I think this is a very, very well thought out application. And I would just say that it just goes to show that not using perhaps builders that are miles away in the other part of the country, the applicant does understand the local vernacular. So I have great pleasure in proposing recommendation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rickman, you want to second it. Do you want to say something as well?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I can't disagree with anything that Richard said. It's the balance that's so good with this scheme about the different amounts of accommodation there. And all I can say is bring on the bungalows too. Thank you.
The design of the manor house as well is really, really good. Councillor Davies.
To be honest, again, this is slightly different to reserved matters, but I can't see any social housing. So to me, it makes no actual contribution towards affordable housing because affordable rented ownership isn't actually affordable. But obviously the design is lovely. I have still some major concerns about ENV3 in terms of the objections that were made. I do worry about the public open space through the play area. I don't, the right of way through the play area. I don't think that's going to be acceptable. The design of the play area as well is something that, as Councillor Frampton has alluded to, I worry that in 4 or 5 years, if it's not managed properly, it's just going to look awful. And it's going to, if it rots and stuff in terms of maintenance, it's going to be awful. We've had some significant issues at other sites with public open spaces and the maintenance of them going forward. So I do have some issues there. I would prefer a deferral until the drainage issues are sorted out, because until we get those comments, I wouldn't like to make a decision either way. But I can't support approving it immediately. I do think there are some good elements to the site, but I do think that there are too many questions at the moment. I would prefer deferral until we get those comments from the Environment Agency in Hampshire.
That's not going to happen. I'm not prepared to defer that. Okay. Does anybody else have anything to say?
There's a move on the table at the moment.
Yeah.
So you have to deal with that first.
Yeah. Okay. Does anybody, if nobody else has anything to say, Councillor Wade?
Yes, Chairman. I raised the issue. I have obviously concerns over the drainage. However, I trust our officers, having raised the point, will make sure that it is correct. Because if it isn't, then it does need to come back to us for some of the description. I do take Jack's point on that, though. It is quite a nice design. I quite like the idea of seeing bungalows as well, actually, because we don't often see those nowadays. And at one time, that was a builder of choice in many parts of the New Forest and indeed the country. So, with the hopeful confidence in our officers sorting out the drainage problem, I think their design is quite good. So I tend to agree with the board.
Thank you. Well, Councillor Davies has proposed to defer this. Do you have a seconder? In that case, it's off the table. Thank you. Does anybody else have anything to say? Okay, before we go to the vote then, I come back to the applicant. You have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
I've got nothing further to say.
In that case, we'll go to the vote. The recommendation is to grant proposed by Councillor Frampton, seconded by Councillor Rickman. It's going to be an electronic vote. Okay, so we will now go ahead and vote. Thank you. That has everybody voted? It's closed. Yeah, okay, it's closed. So 91%, 10 to grant, 9% against, and no abstentions. So that's been granted. Thank you. If you'd like to take a break, if you can be back into the chamber by 10 past. Thank you. Right, we'll go ahead then with the next application, which is on page 35 of your agenda. 24/10445, 83 Commercial Road, Tottenham. We do have the agent here. One speaker. Is it Mr. Julian Boswell? Oh, that's you. Okay, fine. You will have 3 minutes after we've done the presentation. There were no interests on this one, were there? No, okay. Okay, if you'd like to.
Yes, sorry.
Oh, okay, Councillor Penny. Thank you. Thank you. We'll go ahead then with the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. So just to give you a bit of context, the application site is situated within the defined Tottenham town centre on the northern side of Commercial Road. You can see here that the site is situated to the east of the main sort of town centre over here. On Commercial Road, which is one of the key arterial routes in and out of the town centre. The site is sort of in a highly accessible location. We've got a number of bus stops. We're obviously in close proximity to all of the facilities and amenities of the town centre, and we've also got the train station just down here, not too far away from the application site as well. So probably one of the more accessible sites within the district as a whole. Just to give you a bit more context on the site and the surrounding area. So as you can see there, the application site's in the middle of the screen. It's currently got a lawful use for car storage and balloting. As you can see, there's often quite a large number of vehicles on the site. It's currently entirely hard surfaced. And as we'll see in a moment, the site currently just has a sort of high level boundary treatment that runs around the entirety of the site. Broadly speaking, we don't consider this to be a particularly positive use in terms of the wider town centre active frontages, and they're not a particularly attractive feature in the surrounding street scene. So that's formed part of our sort of judgment and a basis on the appropriateness of the redevelopment of the site. As outlined in the report, the site has a couple of specific policy designations. So DM16 and TOT 15 are the relevant ones. They talk about allocating the site specifically for commercial uses as part of the town centre location. Specifically, this site is called out as being potentially appropriate for retail, office or entertainment uses. And there's a specific caveat in the policy which says that while sort of mixed-use development could be considered appropriate, it shouldn't prejudice the opportunity site and it shouldn't be at ground floor level. Now, unfortunately, since the time when those policies were adopted, we've not had any applications come in for the commercial redevelopment of the site. So it's remained in this sort of car storage and balloting use. The current application that's come in is for an entirely residential development, and that's one of the reasons it's here before you today, because it is contrary to those two policies that I've just mentioned. So the application is for a block of 9 flats, 7 2-bed units to 1-bed units. The planning committee has previously considered a entirely residential redevelopment within the realms of this policy designation, which is this site over here. So back in 2021, 2022, the planning committee considered the residential redevelopment of that site and did grant consent for that as an entirely residential-led development. The exemption on that basis was on the grounds of the additional pressing nature of our housing land supply situation and the positive benefits that providing additional dwellings in an accessible location would provide to the district. As outlined in the report, we've made a similar assessment on this site. We feel that the residential redevelopment of the site would represent a positive use of the site when compared to the existing use of the site. So we think in principle that we are prepared to support this application contrary to those two conditions. However, there are obviously a number of other considerations which we'll talk about a bit more in a second. One of the things I will just flag up while we're on this screen here is to keep in mind the relationship of the property here. So there's a garage, which we'll see in a second, that runs the sort of full width of this plot. And also in the report, I talk about the relationship with the properties on Causeway Crescent. So this is number 1 Causeway Crescent here, and this is 71 and 72 here. So just keep in mind that relationship when we're looking at some of the layout plans later on in a second. So just to give you an idea of the sort of site and the layout, there's that garage that we were talking about earlier. This is our application site. As you can see, there's that high level boundary treatment and there's an existing access which is positioned centrally in the plot, which we'll see they've made use of as part of the proposed redevelopment. Just moving, this is looking opposite the street, just to give you a bit of the wider mixed commercial and residential context that the site situates in. And then as we move down the site, this is the plot that's been allocated for granted consent for redevelopment further down the road, and just to give you a bit of a wider context. There is a footpath which runs down the eastern side of the plot into Causeway Crescent. And you can see here, this is a much more residential environment. This is looking back towards the application site there, so that this is our application site here. This is just some indicative drawings to give you an idea of what the proposed development will look like. We'll have a look at the elevational drawings in a bit more detail in a second. So this is the street scene. You can see here the relationship with the surrounding properties. There is an increase in sort of massing, and obviously we're covering quite a large width of the plot. The development has sought to break up the sort of massing with these bays and a large central feature, and you can see there's an undercroft which leads to a parking area to the rear using that existing access. Some modifications have been made to that, which we'll talk about a bit later. The development is 3-storey in scale, but as you can see at the front, that development in the roof is masked slightly with only roof-like windows exhibiting that development there. So just to move on, we can see here one of the things they have tried to introduce is a low-level boundary treatment and some landscaping on the site frontage. So we did feel that this was an improvement on the existing sort of high-level boundary treatment and rather blank frontage that the site presents. You can see we've got some accesses, and then some of the units have access to the rear through the undercroft, which we'll have a look at that layout in a second. Just looking at the back, we can see here that additional massing at the roof form has slightly more evidenced here. So you can see this is where they're getting the roof height to get that 3rd story of accommodation with the dormers and the additional sort of bulk of the roof form being to the rear. It will be somewhat visible because there is that footpath that runs to the rear of the site. So you will have some views across the back of the building. One of the things that I will just to draw your attention to here is the oriel window, this is situated on the closest aspect to the units at 71 and 72 Causeway, which tries to angle the outlook on that side away from those residential properties. Again, you will have some views of the sides of the properties because of the single-storey garage on one side and the currently open aspect development on the other side. So you will get some flank views of this development. So this is just to give you some idea of what that's going to look like. Moving on to the floor plans, the units at the ground floor do have some private areas sectioned off for their private use. There is a wider communal space, which we'll look at in a second, but the ground floor units do have these spaces, which provide some relief from that immediate overlooking from the parking area on this side and the amenity space on this side. You'll see here the bin store is situated in the Undercroft access area. With the idea that the collections, the vehicles won't be entering the site, they'll be picking up from the street scene. Just moving up to the second floor, much as with the ground floor, there is a sort of a front to back relationship. It's the 2-bed units, which are at the ground floor and the first floor level. Typically speaking, the kitchen and living rooms are on the busier front, and then the bedrooms are all situated to the rear, where it's maybe a little quieter. And you can see there, that's that oriel window angling the outlook from this closest point of view away from that nearest residential environment. Moving up to the accommodation in the roof, these are the 2 1-bed units. They have a slightly more spaced out arrangement to accommodate around the staircases, but we are reasonably comfortable that the units retain a reasonable space and outlook. As you'll notice, there's a number of roof-like windows. The windows have been designed so that, I don't know how clearly you can see that on this plan, but they have a high-level positioning in the roof form so that they shouldn't be having direct outlook out of those roof-like windows, but they would still provide an outlook of the sky. So they wouldn't provide overlooking, but would still provide light and outlook. Just coming on to the layout and landscaping, we can see here we've got this communal garden area, which we think is sufficient to meet the needs of the proposed residents. One of the things that we've talked about in the report on page 43 and 44 is the sort of setback from the properties here on Causeway Crescent. So Causeway Crescent number 1 here has the building here and then a garden here, whereas the properties at 71 and 72 are sort of situated here-ish with their rear gardens facing this way. There is a closer relationship here, but we were relatively happy that given the oblique nature of the relationship, that wouldn't be a harmful impact. And there's a much more substantial setback to the rear for 1 Causeway Crescent, which we think is an acceptable relationship. So while there is an increase in both the massing scale and the number of windows looking towards these properties, we think that relationship is acceptable. One of the things that has been, that we have looked at reasonably carefully is the highways impact of the development, because while there is an existing balloting use, which obviously does have a number of vehicles coming and going, one of the concerns we did have is particularly with the multiple occupiers of the property, there'd be potential additional conflict for different users entering and leaving the site at the same time, and given the busy nature of Commercial Road, we wanted to ensure that there wasn't any potential conflict there. So the applicant has done vehicle tracking to show that vehicles can enter and leave the site at the same time, and the Highways Department has reviewed and is happy with that arrangement. As part of that, you can see there's a turning space that's been retained. So one of the conditions seeks to retain that turning space. The development does have a 10 parking spaces, which falls below our parking standards. For a communal parking arrangement in this location, the recommended standard would be 13.3, so there's a 3.3 shortfall. Given the highly accessible nature of the location, we think that the shortfall is justified within the town centre location here. There is a cycle store there, which provides some alternative sustainable transport options for the residents as well. So we think that the transport needs of the occupiers have been addressed. One of the conditions that we have recommended, given the busy nature of the Commercial Road and the size of the development, is to ensure that there is a management strategy during construction works to ensure that there's an appropriate highway safety management during construction. So on that basis, we think the highway safety potential issues are all addressed and covered off. On that basis, our recommendation is that the development does represent a sort of a slightly higher intensity of development, but that was appropriate in the context of the town centre location, and taking into account the accessibility of the site and the sort of benefits that are associated with making a contribution towards our pressing housing need within the district. We think that there is a justification for departing from the policies DM16 and TOT 15. And therefore, we've recommended the application for approval. I am happy to answer any questions if there are any. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We now go to Mr. Boswell. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to address you this morning. This design has developed over the consultation period and now represents what we feel will be a successful example of sustainable development. Your officer's report covers the proposals comprehensively. It explains that the scheme has been designed to blend with the architecture of the surrounding context and will fill a gap in this important frontage. This gap currently fails to fulfil the potential of the site, offering nothing to the approach to Totton Town Centre. Being wholly hard-surfaced, it provides efficient working space, but at the expense of animating the public realm. As can be the case with commercial enterprises, the current use as an open site for storage is viable, but the client has been interested in exploring the potential for a residential use. The scheme therefore offers the opportunity for a development that addresses the road in a positive manner. The proposals comprise an articulated frontage with bay windows and a gabled entrance feature. This continuous form shields the parking from view and the amenity gardens from much of the road noise. The layout of all flats is dual aspect, allowing south-facing light to reach all the living rooms. These are placed at the front and the bedrooms to the rear to also shield the latter from noise, in compliance with the recommendations of the acoustic report that accompanies the application. In addition to the communal amenity space, there are private garden areas to the ground floor flats. The provision for parking is slightly in excess of 1 space per flat, and the site's location means it is well served by public transport and amenities.
Care has been taken in designing the vehicular entrance so that it will be safe to use for drivers and pedestrians, and it does not overpower the building's composition. The building's frontage is set back from the pavement, and protective railings and planting are included to provide security and an appropriate setting, notably for the ground floor flats. The creation of a second floor largely set within roof space is important to achieve a density that economically justifies the site's development, whilst respecting the surrounding built form that is predominantly two-storey. The officer's report explains in detail how the composition has been developed to provide a form that is varied and appropriate to the site, using a restrained range of materials, predominantly brick, with some tile hanging, which are characterful of many buildings within the New Forest district. I've been pleased to work with your planning officer and their team in reaching this position whereby the proposals before you are recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions, please, for applicant or officers. Councillor Davies.
Thank you. Sorry, I couldn't see a bin store on there. Is there going to be a bin store? That one there. And again, is it up to standard?
So we didn't consult with the waste team on the bin store here because this wasn't a major development and they were planning to have, they weren't planning on refuse vehicles entering the site, so it's just going to be on-road collection. It's large enough to accommodate for the larger wheeled communal bins. Obviously, if they do find that they need additional bin storage, they potentially do have additional scope on site to site additional bin storage elsewhere, but at the moment, that's what's been presented.
Councillor Dowd.
Yes, I've got a question on, it's point 8, consulting comments about the ecologist. And I'm curious about why it is that mitigation isn't specific to Totton, that mitigation seems to be, possible to have that mitigation elsewhere, given that the development is within Totton. Is there a reason why mitigation can't happen within the Totton area?
So in terms of, we do have condition 9, which seeks a scheme of ecological enhancements on the site. So that provides on-site ecological enhancement measures. In terms of
the site, it's a massive improvement on what's there. I haven't got an issue with that at all. I'm just concerned if the developer is having to provide mitigation, why that mitigation can't be linked to the Totton redevelopment in a very specific way, because I didn't see any link to that. And that would seem to my mind to be a really logical thing to do, given that Totton is undergoing regeneration. That it would seem to be an ideal opportunity to tie that in with that ongoing project.
So one of the key tests for us when we are applying conditions is they have to be sort of reasonable, necessary, and linked to the development that's being proposed. In this case, we've secured as much ecological enhancement as we think we reasonably can do associated with the scale of development. So this isn't where it's 9 units, this isn't a major development scheme, so therefore it doesn't have the same sort of Section 106 implications that a larger development would do so in terms of needs to provide off-site enhancement. In terms of stuff like the biodiversity net gain as well, as outlined in the report, where the site is currently entirely hard surfaced, there isn't there's no habitat to be impacted, so there's no therefore it's exempt from the need to provide further biodiversity net gain. Jump in.
Chairman, maybe I can help with pick up as well, because I think your question, you took the case officer a moment ago to part 8 of the report, which is on page 38. And I think in that part, the summary of the ecology comments are about the implications for the increase in population and overnight accommodation on sensitive habitats. So that's the solent bird habitats, that's the recreational pressure that comes with the New Forest and its relationship to the New Forest. There's narrative on that in your report, specifically on page 46, deals with ecology, and over the page to 47, we deal with habitat mitigation. And the mitigation secured there is common across all parts of the district. The one on water neutrality will be dependent on the water catchment, which will go out into the relevant catchment area relative to the impact on the Solent, SAC or SPA. That will be dealt with through the appropriate assessment and through the planning conditions. Recreational impacts are also dealt with through the obligations with the relevant contributions being sought. So the approach, I think, is common across the district when we're looking at that net increase in population and dealing with habitat sites. So you've got those off-site impacts as well as the on-site enhancements the case officer's taking you to.
Are there any more questions? Then, Councillor Riley, question?
Could you enlighten me a bit more about parking on there? I think there's allocated 9 parking spaces. You've got 9 properties there. You're underneath what you allow. Can you explain that? Because it's going to cause a problem for parking there, isn't it?
So we've got a parking standards SPD, which lays out various different sort of parking standards and the type of parking arrangements that we sort of find acceptable. There is a sort of a standard if you are providing spaces on a unit by unit basis, where the spaces are allocated for specific units. And then for flatted properties, there's a separate standard where you have sort of these communal style parking arrangements. In this case, as I said, the parking standard for a communal arrangement in a property of this sort of makeup would be 13.3. So obviously that's not necessarily an immediate one space for one space breakdown. In this case, obviously there is sufficient space. The applicant hasn't committed to providing a specific layout. In this case, there is a sufficient space for a one-for-one relationship with one space left over, which could be a visitor parking space, but that would be up for the particular management company to manage how they wanted to arrange that. In this case, as I said, where we were in a town centre location with highly accessible accessibility of the site, we think that arrangement is acceptable. Though obviously, you can make your own judgment on whether or not you think the parking capacity is sufficient.
Thank you. We're now going to debate. Councillor Davies.
So I do in principle support this development. My one issue is the parking, because obviously nowadays if you've got a couple living there, both of them are probably going to drive nowadays. I mean, we have severe issues in other parts of the forest where obviously these houses were designed many years ago, weren't designed for the number of cars, and now you've got a significant number. So that is my one concern. I think the overall development of the site is an improvement on what was there, clearly. But that is my one slight reservation, is that with the best will in the world, I think there are going to be certainly the kind of people who are going to be moving into a flat like that would have more cars than there are spaces currently.
Councillor Wade.
Chairman, I think it's a very good design, actually, and it's ideally located in Totton, where it has really good public transport links. This isn't the first flats in Totton that has been built and we've given permission to that haven't had lots of car parking. There is one round the corner from Asda, which we remember we passed. This is, and that's President, not maybe way played, but it's not the first time. I do take the point about cars, because if you've got 10 properties, very often if a couple in there, they've got a car each, even when there's good public transport links. So I do take that point on board, but there is a limitation to the amount of space. And on balance, with that point, I think this is a good application, and I propose support, because I think it ticks a lot of boxes. Housing, it's an area with local public transport. Yes, there's not enough parking spaces. That's its only potential downfall, I think. But the rest of it, I think is very good. Good design.
Any more comments? Councillor Frampton.
I'd like to propose a recommendation.
Second. Okay. Does anybody else have anything they want to say? In that case, we'll come back to the developer. You have 1 minute to respond. Thank you.
I'm grateful, but I have no further comments to make. Thank you.
We'll go to the vote then. So the recommendation is to grant. That's been proposed by Councillor Wade and seconded by Councillor Frampton. All of those in favour, please raise your hands. Oh, sorry. Sorry, my arm's gone, my brain's gone. Thank you. Right, okay. Okay, that has been granted, 100% there, 11 votes for. So that's been granted. Thank you. Okay, we'll go on to the next application, which is Little Acre, 8 Dark Lane, Blackfield. Application 25/10210, page 57 of the agenda, and we have one speaker, the applicant. So first of all, we'll go to the presentation, please. Thank you very much. Julie?
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Just as an update, we have had a letter of support from the neighbour opposite the property at Perilandra in New Road, who've commented that the proposed design is in keeping with the area and a modest and thoughtful improvement. We've also had a supporting statement from the applicant, which I believe you've had receipt of. So the red line plan. So number 8 is on a corner of 2 roads. So we have Dark Lane to the north, and coming up from the east to southeast is New Road, from the main roads in Blackfield. You can see it in a bit more context. It is within the built-up area. Just to the north of the site, this green area is an area which is classified as countryside, and then further over to the east is National Park Authority. Just to give you a bit of context. There is quite a rural character along Dark Lane. It's quite a narrow road, and obviously with the verdant side here. There's a row here of distinctive bungalows, which are quite low level, with a mixture of properties along New Road. This is a line showing the building line, so the perceived building line along New Road. We've got the application site at the end here. So as you see, all the properties are set quite well back along New Road. This is a block plan showing the proposal, which is for roof alterations and a slight increase in the ridge height, and also a single-storey side extension, which was approved back in 2023. So these roof alterations have already been approved, and the changes are the 2-storey instead of a single-storey to the side, which will become evident when I show you the plans. So this is the existing bungalow. So it's a modest bungalow. It's got a dual-pitched roof and it's got low eaves. There's a garage to the side here. And as you can see, the utility has been built on the side. Again, a bit more clear on the existing floor plans. Garage, utility facing New Road. It's all on one level at the moment. So the proposal is to go up in the roof, as I say, increasing the height of the eaves, to have a large dormer along the side, and then a 2-storey element which will protrude towards New Road. So this is the back of the property, so you can see it here coming out to the side, and from the front it will come out with a gable, and this will have high eaves and a high ridge coming off the end, and it's about 6 metres from the ridge to the end here. The application is recommended for refusal, and it's brought to you today as it's a contrary view from the parish council. The reasons for the refusal are the scale and design of the proposed two-storey element. With its high eaves and low pitched roof, it doesn't relate positively to the existing bungalow or to the extended bungalow as shown here. It has an awkward relationship with this dormer, which is being added to the sides. This is all facing New Road. So it contributes to a bulky first floor facing New Road, protruding beyond the building line, which creates a dominant impact on the street scene. So here we can see how it's going to be finished with cladding, which does accentuate the first floor even more. As you can see here, the protrusion to the side and the level internally. Proposed floor plans, so it's a basic layout downstairs, and then the bedrooms at first floor with 3 bedrooms and a bathroom. This was the previously approved plans back in 2023. As you can see, the raised height, and then there was going to be 3 dormers along the side and a smaller utility, which has been built slightly larger at its current state. Photographs of the street scene. Here you can see number 8 down the bottom of the road, Dark Lane, very distinctive character, and obviously very green opposite. And you can see it as you go down New Road, it does decline. The road does decline quite significantly, so number 8 is on a lot lower level than its neighbouring properties. So this was where the slight increase in height, which was previously approved, and then you see the 2-storey element coming towards New Road. This is the front of the property, you can see, and the rear. 2 photographs of the side of the property as you're coming up from Dark Lane, up New Road, the extension would be, and again to the side here. These are taken internally in the back of the site, obviously the rear of the neighbours. We've looked at it in quite great detail, both applications. We didn't feel there was any impact on these neighbours. We've had no comments to that effect. So we have recommended for refusal because of the 2-storey side extension, which would introduce a large incongruous addition, top heavy, high eaves and low pitch, awkward relationship. So in fact it was poorly designed and dominant in the street scene, which was contrary to local policies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Stephanie Miller-Harris, you have 3 minutes to put your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to start by saying that we are a young family simply trying to future-proof our home. I grew up on New Road and my parents still live opposite at us at Perelandra. And although we already have approved plans, we are just trying to maximise the space that we have to work with alongside our budget. We appreciate the reference to policy ENV3 and the MPPF and fully agree that high quality design and local distinctiveness are essential to good planning. However, we respectfully disagree that our proposed 2-storey side extension and dormer represent poor quality design or visual harm to the street scene. We've spoken directly to all of our neighbours, including the bungalows along Dark Lane, and everyone we've spoken to is supportive of the design. Fawley Parish Council also raised no objections. So from those most directly affected, the proposal is not considered harmful or out of keeping, and we hope that this local support will be given due weight. We recognise that our plot sits on the corner of Dark Lane and New Road, which have very different characteristics. Dark Lane is more uniform, although there are exceptions like the Hollies at the other end of our street that is also not in keeping with the rest of the bungalows. And then New Road, by contrast, features varied ridge heights, eave heights, dormers, and a general mix of architectural styles. Our design aims to respect both streets. We initially explored a box dormer, like others on New Road, but in our opinion, it appeared bulky and unsightly, especially from Dark Lane. So we opted for a hipped roof dormer with more traditional detailing. The small flat roof section is also not visible from Dark Lane and steers away from the boxy look that we were keen to avoid. We also added cladding similar to one of the other bungalows along New Road, along Dark Lane, to help the side extension feel more coherent with the rest of the property. The main eaves of the original house remain unchanged. However, these have been allowed to be raised in the same style bungalow in a nearby street, Nicholas Road in Langley. The slightly higher eaves on ours only apply to the extension that will be only visible from the new road side, where the eaves and ridge heights already vary along the street. The street naturally steeps downhill, and where our property sits below the road level, the raised eaves will not appear overbearing or dominant. Regarding the concerns around the prominence on the street, due to the topography and our setback position, the extension wouldn't feel intrusive on the street. We are also 2 metres from our boundary, as this is the side of our property. Number 7 Dark Lane adjacent to us has just been granted permission to extend right up to the side on our borderline. The ground floor overhang is also only visible from within our own garden and would not be seen from the street. And we believe the corner plot gives us an opportunity to create a subtle turning point in streetscape with a design that works well from both New Road and Dark Lane. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions, please. Does anybody have a question? Councillor Dowd.
It's not really a question. Can I just have a look, please, in quick succession at the original plan and the current plan, just to compare the two?
Yeah, so this is a previously approved plan in 2023. As you can see, it had 3 small dormers on the side and a small utility, and raised the roof very slightly. And here we have the proposed plan. So say that the increase in height is the same, but we've now got a pitched and flat roof dormer, which integrates with a 2-storey extension, which comes out towards New Road. Thank you.
Are there any more questions? Then we'll debate. Councillor Dowd.
In my non-expert way, I'm afraid I feel that the current plan actually looks visually more appealing than the previous plan. And I accept the points about how the plot lies and how that will also reduce the impact. So I'm inclined to go along with the parish council on this one. So I'd like to propose that we accept.
Councillor Wade.
Yes, Chairman. Our communities are littered with bungalows converted in a similar manner to this. It's not unusual. Well, I can think of countless streets of bungalows in Hythe and Dibden, where first one was converted, then another, and so forth. It's a natural progression of developing a property that was built probably in the 60s, 70s, to something much larger for a family to live in. I totally understand the officer's judgments on ENV3, and she's made a judgment call based on that, and absolutely right that she should do that. But actually, I don't really have a problem with this. Where it's located isn't a problem. I shouldn't think it's that the parish council thinks it's a good idea. So that's always a good sign, unless we can find a really serious planning issue from it. I'm inclined to agree with my colleague, and I'll second his proposal.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything to say? Councillor Frampton.
Well, we could just throw away ENV3, couldn't we? It's quite specific. All developments should be high quality design and contribute positively to the local distinctiveness. The local distinctiveness, when we were looking at those pictures, was of low-lying bungalows. That bungalow on the corner, I gather, has been set into the hill, and that would have been deliberately to keep a very low, unobtrusive roof line, so that when you're looking along the street scene, it virtually just blends in with the other ones. You stick a 2-storey on that side, that's all you're going to see looking down that road. It's totally out of character, it's totally out of keeping, and I certainly cannot see that it positively contributes to the street scene. Now, I know family circumstances change. We've got to take a very long-term view on areas, their vernacular, their character, and that goes on past individuals owning houses. That's why we've got ENV3. I'll be voting against that proposal.
Councillor Hart.
I'll have to disagree because on the new road, there are more than half a dozen tall houses, twin story, and there's also, I think, they're all in their dorms. I think it will be within keeping on the new roadside. It's very difficult because it's sitting on the corner. To me, it looks like that property does belong in New Road. Thank you.
Does anybody else have anything to say? Councillor Richards.
I don't really have a problem with raising the roof height as proposed, but I mean there is already a planning application, approved planning application, which does this and so would allow that extra space. And I have to agree with the planning officer that this proposed application is quite bulky and not particularly appealing to look at. So I would vote against it.
Does anybody else have any comment? Okay. I'll come back to the speaker. Sorry? Yeah, okay, I'll bring officers in first.
Chairman, thank you. Just mindful of the proposal and the motion that's on the floor and perhaps the direction of travel with the debate. Can I suggest that you give some consideration to, if the recommendation is for permission, which is the motion on the floor, as I understand it, you give some consideration to whether you need any appropriate planning conditions as a result of that planning permission, or is it an unconditional permission? Your officers have given some thought, and I've got some notes here that we perhaps consider the standard time condition to require commencement within 3 years. It be carried out in accordance with the relevant plans, so we can list the drawing numbers. We will look to have brick and tiles as external facing materials to match the existing house. But we will seek a sample of the cladding to be submitted and approved given its prominence on that new road frontage. So I would suggest, if we can, those would be a suitable set of conditions, perhaps delegated back to us to refine the final wording for a decision.
That sounds acceptable.
And to me, sounds a very sensible strategy.
I'll come back to the applicant. You have 1 minute to respond.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I completely understand that, and I think the photos are really quite difficult to see. New Road has such a vast kind of range of properties on it. There's a 6-bed almost mansion at one point. There's various bungalows that have already been converted. So I think when you are traveling down the street, it's not going to look out of place at all. My parents' property opposite used to also have large dormers. Unfortunately, we had a house fire and that has since been changed, but that it's already kind of on the street that it used to be looking over the same part of the road. And then I suppose from the Dark Lane side, we've really tried our best to ensure that those, you know, the original eave height isn't changed. It's just the ridge that has previously been approved. So from Dark Lane, it should still be in keeping. But yeah, I think that's all my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a proposal by Councillor Dowd to approve this subject to conditions delegated to officers. That has been seconded by Councillor Wade. All of those, electronic vote. All of those that approve, please, or disapprove, please press. Thank you. So that is 11 for, 2 against, 1 abstention. So, 8. Grant subject to conditions. Granted. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.